Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you guys are doing absolutely great today, as good as I am, even though I'm a little bit sick. Still thankful always, of course, to be here. And I haven't been uploading any of these videos, of course, but perhaps I should upload them because, like I said, it's really for me at the end of the day, despite the fact that no one watches them. Maybe someone will watch them someday, who knows? Depends what happens with my life, of course. But I wanted to talk about a very important concept that I've oftentimes thought about applying, but I haven't realized the extent of which it actually, actually affects our life, of course. And this is a concept that you guys might understand intuitively, of course, but I'm going to articulate it to you in a certain way with an analogy so you guys better understand it. It's something that could be fundamental to absolutely changing your mindset, your productivity, and absolutely pretty much the results of your whole life, right? And it's something that we don't understand really. You might understand it intuitively, but we don't understand the extent of which it affects us. And when we talk about this concept, let's call it mental real estate, of course, right? So essentially, what we're asking ourselves is initially, what contents do we fill up our mind with, right? Let's think about it analogous to real estate. Let's say, find blank land, of course, unbuilt property, and then you build on it, right? So think about when you start the day, absolutely blank slate, you start building property, of course, right? The first action, for example, that you take in the day might actually dictate the whole direction of how things go. You might build some sort of house, right? But let's be a little bit less analogous because it'll make sense a lot, right? So think about the contents that you fill your mind up with. We might think that, you might actually think that, obviously, the first thing you do in the day is the first thing that you're filling your mind up with, which might set the direction. And that's something you guys may understand. But what you don't understand is the deep ramifications of mental real estate and how you're actually hurting yourself, even consuming constantly things that you think are actually helping you, right? And let's talk about this. Let's look at this, right? So think about, you're always consuming information. You're always trying to entertain yourself. This is because of your dopamine circuit, of course, right? You want to see more things. And some of you may think that you're being productive because you're learning more about the industry, perhaps, or you're learning more. You're watching self-help videos, you're watching all these things. What you might not be realizing is that it's actually just for subconsciously, you're just watching it for entertainment at the same time, right? Now, what's the issue with this? It might be helpful. You might actually learn useful nuggets out of this, but what happens? Imagine real estate, right? If you build a whole bunch of houses when there's actually not enough demand to fill the houses, there's gonna be a crash. And so there's gonna be a deficiency, of course, in that real estate market. And people are, obviously, it doesn't happen very much, but maybe in the US, right? You build way too much real estate, you're building way too many houses, and there's not enough people to even live in them, right? So this is how we use our brain, is that we're always consuming information when you don't realize that you actually have enough. You've actually built enough knowledge to start executing with it. You don't need to stop. You don't need to continue to build. You don't need to continue to search for knowledge. That's actually you subconsciously. And it's really important that you make this distinction, because you're hurting yourself if you don't. The fact that you're actually hurting yourself by informing yourself too much, because that information is useless if you don't use it. The best thing to do is have the full utility of the information that you're consuming on a day-to-day basis, and actually be very careful not to build too much houses, because there might not be enough demand, which means that you might not be utilizing the houses right. And what happens whenever no one utilizes house? It breaks down over time, right? Squatters enter. It deteriorates itself if you don't use it enough. So don't continue to I want you to take a break one day from consuming information, even though it might not be helpful for you. And what will happen, right? What you'll notice is that whenever you have a specific question, that's when the idea to go to YouTube, perhaps, to address the specific question that you had will come to mind. And then you'll actually go with an intention into the app every single time, instead of mindlessly scrolling, because it might happen, and this is a representation perfectly that it's actually a dopamine circuit that's controlling this healthy habit of trying to learn more, right? The fact that you just randomly open up an app and to try to consume information or whatever it is, that's more of a personal example, right? But it's actually harmful. What you should do is, whenever you have a specific question, that question arises because it means that you're taking action, it means that you're at a hurdle, and that's when you should consume these things. What happens if you don't do that? If you do the way you're currently doing right now, you're actually mindlessly scrolling, and then you don't even have control eventually over if the content that you're watching is actually even helpful or not. It might just be entertaining. This is the way obviously YouTube functions. It functions to entertain you, not to inform you. Be very aware of this. And also stop falling into that habit. You're strengthening the wrong habit. All right. You should be strengthening your ability to use the information that you have to make it more useful, to not let all the information that you've learned deteriorate, because then you're just going to fall in the same cycle of constantly having consumed information. And the worst thing is, whenever you fall in that constant cycle of like I said, you build on the things that you constantly do, right? Repetition builds things. So if you're always repeating the same habit of consuming information and forgetting it, you're not holding it, that's not a good thing to have, right? There's some people who consume a ton of information, but at the time at the right talk, they'll actually bring up the facts that they learned. This is something that, unfortunately, it's a symptom of something that I'm doing. I'm speaking from experience here, right? This is a distinction that I have to make for myself that I hope helps you guys. But it's the fact that sometimes I'm like, wait, I actually, like even after a conversation, I'll have a very deep conversation with someone, and I do tend to know a lot about, pretty much a lot of things, right? But what I realize at the same time is that like I forget the things that I knew. And sometimes I have a conversation or a very long conversation with someone, and I completely forget that I even knew that information. I'm like, damn, I should have added this. I should have added this information in, right? So it's just something that's extremely important for you guys to realize. Stop, actually use the information that you have. Stop consuming. Make it a habit. Eliminate the habit of entering. And first to eliminate it, right? You have to identify that it's harming you. And then after you identify that it's harming you, stop doing it. It's actually harming you because it's not helpful to consume information, to not use information you use. It's making you weaker. It's making your memory worse. And you're gonna see that you can actually get a lot done with what you've learned. And you might even start seeing that certain things that you learned, you start to remember again. That's freaking awesome. That's where you want to be, all right? So I want you to make that change. If you make that change, it's gonna go really well for you guys. And if I make that change, it's gonna go extremely well for me. And I've done that before, but I need to start identifying. I want to just be looking for information whenever I need it, because that means that I'm taking action. And hey, look, I actually need to grab from a resource, a fountain of information, and I actually need to retain this information to apply it, which means that the next time you ask information, the next time you get an answer, because you won't have a whole bunch of mental real estate, all this information cluttered in your head, it'll be fresh, right? It won't be mixed in with all the information that you learned throughout the day. It won't be insignificant. It'll actually be useful, and it'll help you so much. This is gonna make such a profound impact on the way that you function, and you'll realize, unfortunately, that you'll be like, wait, hold on, I was actually of course, mental real estate actually determines your mindset, because you're constantly consuming things on YouTube. To some extent, you're knowing things that you shouldn't even be learning. Like, why is it relevant to know about like how to make a pizza? If you're trying to start a software, of course, maybe there's a recommendation. And you start cluttering your head, which means that actually the algorithm has control over you and you're not even realizing it, which means that if your mental real estate is determining the contents of your head, then that also means that it's determining what you do with your life. And you should be very conscious to not let anything take control from you when it comes to taking action with your life. You should be very aware and very interconnected, you should have an intrinsic, you should be very intrinsic about the actions that you take. You should make sure that they're actually your objectives, and that it's your real estate, everything, the contents of your head aren't being dictated by something external, but it's actually connected to your motives, and you're looking actively for things to help you complete your objectives. And that's how it should be always. That's what you want to strengthen. You don't want to strengthen anything that does the opposite of that, all right? Anything that takes control away from you. You're gonna see that your life is gonna go much better. But the first step, like I said, is to identify the fact that it's actually harming you and that it's actually a bad habit, what you're doing.